The tribunal chamber of the Valdari Empire stretched endlessly upward, its obsidian walls carved with the conquests of 1,000 worlds. Today it would witness what the assembled Xenos believed to be justice. Arya Ven stood in the center of the chamber, her crutches supporting her frail frame as 6 species of galactic overlords stared down at her with compound eyes, thermal pits, and electromagnetic sensors. At 13 standard years, she was small even for a human. The genetic defect that had twisted her legs since birth made her appear even more fragile beneath the harsh violet lights. The human child has been found guilty of espionage, High Arbiter Zexthor announced, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. The prescribed punishment is presentation to Drakor, the eternal flame, who has consumed every criminal offered to him for 3 centuries. A murmur of approval rippled through the gallery. The other species, Valdari, Kryn, Thessian, and others, had long agreed that humans were too curious, too reckless. When Earth had been discovered, the Galactic Council had immediately classified humanity as a potential threat. Arya's crime had been accessing restricted files about their weapons programs. She had wanted to understand the technology that might help fix legs like hers. Now she would die for it. 2 Kryn guards dragged her toward the massive iron door at the chamber's far end. Arya didn't struggle. She had learned early in life that her body couldn't fight in conventional ways. Instead, she observed. She calculated. She survived. The door groaned open, revealing a pit that descended into volcanic darkness. Heat blasted upward, carrying the scent of sulfur and ancient ash. Far below, something massive stirred. "Any last words, human?" Zexthor asked, barely concealing his amusement. Arya looked up at him, her brown eyes steady. "Yeah, you should have read more about humans before you judged us." The guards released her crutches. They clattered against stone as she tumbled forward, disappearing into the abyss. Arya fell through superheated air, her hair whipping around her face. She didn't scream. Screaming wasted oxygen, and she would need every breath. Her hands found the emergency thermal blanket she'd hidden in her jacket, smuggled from the medical bay during her imprisonment. She pulled it around herself just before impact. She hit something that wasn't ground, something scaled and burning hot. The thermal blanket hissed but held, protecting her from immediate incineration. A sound like grinding continents filled the cavern as Drakor awakened fully. The dragon was impossibly large, his body a living geography of crimson scales and obsidian horns. Each breath from his nostrils could melt steel. His eyes, ancient and burning with inner fire, fixed upon the tiny creature that had landed on his back. For 300 years, Drakor had been the Valdari Empire's executioner. For 300 years, criminals had been thrown to him. Warriors, rebels, spies. All had tried to fight. All had tried to run. All had burned, but this one did neither. Arya carefully released the thermal blanket, letting the heat dissipate gradually. Her legs, useless for running, didn't betray her with panic-driven flight. Instead, she sat perfectly still on the dragon's back, her small hand pressed against a scale larger than her entire torso. "Hello, Drakor," she said quietly. "My name is Arya." The dragon's growl vibrated through her bones. His massive head swiveled, bringing one enormous eye level with her. In its depths, Arya saw not mindless hunger but intelligence, vast, ancient, and unutterably weary. "You don't want to do this," she continued, her voice steady despite the waves of heat. "You never wanted to do this, did you?" Drakor's rumble shifted, becoming something almost like words. The translation implant in Arya's ear caught fragments. Bound, oath, chains of flame. Arya's mind raced. The restricted files she'd accessed hadn't just been about weapons. They'd contained information about the Valdari's magical binding techniques, how they enslaved powerful beings to their will. And dragons, she now understood, were not native to this world. They'd been conquered, just like humanity was being conquered now. "They bind you with a neural collar," Arya said, examining the dragon's neck where scales seemed fused with metallic threads, a quantum entanglement device keyed to obedience protocols. "But human neurology is different. The Valdari know this, they're afraid of it. Our brains form patterns they can't predict." She pulled a small data chip from her pocket, the very evidence that had condemned her. On it were the schematics for the collar's suppression mechanism. "I can't walk properly, Drakor," Arya said, her voice cracking slightly. "My body failed me before I was even born. But my mind? That works just fine, and I've spent every moment in that cell figuring out how to break their technology. the dragon's breathing slowed. In the hellish light of the pit, something like hope flickered. Arya crawled along Drakor's spine, each movement carefully planned to avoid his wound-scarred ridges. Her crutches were gone, so she used her arms and the strength she'd built from a lifetime of compensation. When she reached the collar, she began to work. The Valdari had made an error. They assumed physical weakness meant complete helplessness. They'd never considered that a girl, who'd spent her life problem-solving around disability, would approach challenges differently. Arya bypassed the collar's primary systems and accessed its maintenance port, designed for technicians, not prisoners. Her fingers steady despite the heat. Input the exploit code she'd memorized. The collar sparked once, twice, then shattered in a cascade of dying light. Above in the tribunal chamber, Zexathor was mid-speech about humanity's weakness when the iron door exploded outward. Drakor emerged from the pit, wings spread wide, volcanic fire trailing from his maw. On his back, a 13-year-old girl with twisted legs sat tall, her hand resting on the dragon's neck, not in control, but in partnership. "You wanted to end me," Arya called out, her voice amplified by Drakor's roar. "Instead, you freed me and him. That's what you never understood about humans. We don't break the way you expect. We adapt, we bond, we survive." The Galactic Council chambers erupted into chaos as Drakor's roar shook the foundations of their empire. But he didn't attack. Instead, he waited, following the lead of the small human who had given him something no one else had in 3 centuries. Freedom and respect. "Now," Arya said, her eyes blazing with determination, "let's talk about Earth's membership in this council. As equals." In the years that followed, diplomats would speak of the day a disabled child brought the might of the Galactic Empire to the negotiating table. They would call it impossible. They would call it luck, but those who understood humans knew better. They had simply witnessed what humanity meant when faced with extinction. Stubborn, clever, unbreakable hope, riding on the back of a dragon who'd finally found a friend, and the galaxy would never underestimate either of them again.